Hey everybody, my name is John DePietro and I want to welcome you to this segment where we talk with parents of children that have either been diagnosed or undiagnosed or not yet diagnosed with this terrible condition. I don't want to call it necessarily a disease, but a condition called Pandas. And for those of you that are in the community, you know what I mean. So many people have experienced this issue and not know that they've actually experienced it. Some people are going through it right now. Some have gone through it. And we've got a couple people that are our guests today that fall into both categories, are in it and have gone through it. But more importantly than that is that they are giving back to the community with a couple of very different alternative methods of, I don't want to say medicine or healing or anything like that, I'm just going to put it this way, trying to get our kids back. And joining us today are Kim Turgeon from Shrewsbury and also Suzanne Doiron from Shrewsbury as well. So Kim, I've known you longer, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, what you do for work, and about the status with your kids, and then we'll invite Suzanne to kind of do the same thing.
Great, thanks, John. So I am a mom of two children who have Pandas disorder, have been diagnosed and treated for about 6 years, and I would say are 95% back to their baseline, or what we think is their baseline. I'm also a teacher and have been teaching for 24 years, and about a year and a half ago, we found hypnosis for my daughter, who was still struggling with some patterns that had become more habituated after being well and treated for Pandas. Mm-hmm. And I found myself fascinated in her success and became a trained clinical hypnotist. So now I've been using hypnosis to help families and children. And I also run the Central Mass Pandas support group, which has been just a phenomenal resource. And everyone who has joined the group really has brought different pieces that they offer of support and expertise. And Suzanne and I met recently as we're both parents and live fairly close to each other. And both
didn't even know it, right?
Didn't even know it. And you know, honestly, that's such a gift, that one of the gifts that comes out of this horrible disorder is finding people that you connect with and support in miraculous ways. So Suzanne is a holistic counselor who also has a son who's 16 with Pandas, and I'll let her tell a little bit about herself.
Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. I feel like I'm finally sort of out of that deep, dark cave where I'm really ready to give back and to be kind of part of the world again in a really different way. As those of you who live with this, you know, it's kind of all encompassing, can really take over, and everything else gets arrested. So it's been really fun to reemerge and be part of our own healing and now be able to really give back. And so thank you for having me. This is just feels really wonderful. And yeah, it's so great to meet you, Kim.
Tell us a little bit, Suzanne. Tell us about your professional background, what you do.
Yeah, so I've been a social worker for about 25 years. And most of that time was in the healthcare field. I spent most of my professional life in hospice, in palliative care. And so working with people who were dealing with life-limiting illness and experiencing really, you know, one of the hardest times in their lives and supporting their families, and doing a lot of grief work and counseling and running support groups for folks in the aftermath of that experience. And I've had a part-time private practice alongside of that all this time, which has kind of ebbed and flowed depending upon what was going on in my life or sort of how busy my full-time job was. But now everything has lined up that I've decided to take the leap to do this full time. And as part of that, really giving back to children and families who are living with this. So for the past 15 years, I've been on a quest of learning and training for doing different energy medicine modalities. So primary ones that I use are emotional freedom technique, which we can talk about a little bit, and emotion code, body code, and I'm also a Reiki practitioner. And I found they were really my life preservers for myself and our family, and for Joseph when he was sick.
Hmm. So
They
I think it's clear to everybody who watches this broadcast. They're not. This is not of general interest show. I mean, you're watching this because you've got an issue with a pandas child in one way or another, and I think everyone will agree that this is more of a marathon than a 50-yard dash. And so many parents have, and we're involved with it because we have a granddaughter that is involved with this, and I know that my daughter has taken her to every different type of medical professional imaginable, from Boston to Worcester to New York City. She's had every different type of blankogram or thisogram or thatogram or whatever. She's had more blood tests, et cetera. And I think the studies have shown that when we've talked with people whose children are quote unquote back, there have been a wide variety of different ways that people have gotten their kids back. And I know that, Kim, you found that even though your daughter, one or two daughters was back, was it your daughter and son?
It was my daughter specifically,
Yeah.
who
Okay.
she started out as the anxiety she was having was really connected to the inflammation in her brain. But then as she became well physically, the patterns became habituated patterns of anxiety, just patterns that automatically happened to her and were triggered. So giving her the sense of control in a time where everything felt so out of control was so refreshing for her. And really the techniques and tools that we taught her to be able to gain control when she started to go down that path of anxiety, doing anxiety, changed her life. And she now will say to me, "Mom, I hypnotize myself every single day." And I think that's one of the big misconceptions, is that when you work with a hypnotist, they're truly teaching you to self-hypnotize. They're guiding you with suggestions that you want to make for changes, but there are many people that will say all hypnosis is self-hypnosis.
Hmm.
There's just, I work with them, not on them, to guide them to helping get control.
The type of patient, is patient the right word? Client? What's the better word? Patient or client? Client. Okay. That you work with. Tell us, we're in this COVID situation right now as we broadcast this, as we tape this. Is your service provided on a face-to-face basis, or should say it's face-to-face regardless, but is it in person? Is it strictly online, virtually, or how do you provide that service?
So for me, I do kind of both. Before COVID, it was in the office, and I really didn't anticipate liking being on Zoom for hypnosis sessions. But surprisingly, I have found it to be truly amazing and a different entry point for children. Oftentimes they come with anxiety types of behaviors, and having them be in their own house gives them an entry point of comfort and security. And they're already on technology so much more frequently than I am, that they're comfortable. So for me, it's both. And it's been wonderful to have that opportunity to grow and learn with the technology. How about you, Suzanne?
I completely agree. So this is new territory for me, doing the online sessions, the telesessions. But it's been really effective. I feel like it's somewhat disarming because people are in their own space, kind of in the comfort of their own home, for the adults too, not just for the children. But I do work out of Truth Organic Spa and Wellness Center in North Grafton. So I have a space that we are now open that people can come to if they choose. But I think this is going to be somewhat of a new wave, that there are a lot of people for all kinds of reasons who can't get out, whether it's because you're in the chaos of the illness. I know for us, there were long chunks of time where, you were running to the grocery store and you had that 1 hour a week, and that was it. You just needed, it's sort of all hands on deck. And so for a lot of folks, it's really challenging to get out. So I think, I'm really grateful. Sort of one of the silver linings in all of this, it's sort of pushed me out of my comfort zone to be able to offer this in this way.
It makes it more accessible to Pandas families who, you're right, oftentimes their children refuse to get in a car and don't they don't have that option to travel far to help
Right.
find help for them.
Well, plus, Kim, when you do the virtual program, geography is not an issue. You can deal with people from all over the place. I know you had mentioned that, again, you're based in Shrewsbury, which is the greater Worcester area, but now you could see with regularity people out in the western part of the state as well, just by them going into their living room or their dining room table or whatever and accessing the service that way. Suzanne, tell us a little bit about, before you, because a lot of people haven't heard your story yet. A lot of people have heard Kim's story. Tell us the hell that you went through with your son and why that you think that this program that you're offering to others would be of benefit to them to get them out of that living hell.
So it's funny, before we hit record, you asked me when did this all begin, and I know the exact day that our life changed, and I know that that's true for some families, where you can just pinpoint that moment where everything changed, and that was true for us. He had my son's, he's 16. He had a very rapid onset. Everything was fine. We had just come back from vacation, had a great vacation. And then he developed severe mental status changes, so neurological changes. And he became really manic. He couldn't sleep. His thoughts were really distorted. He was having these strange outbursts. And so we took him to the emergency room and did the $1 million workup. They ran every test that I thought existed at the time. I later learned that there were lots more tests, different kinds of tests that kind of traditional Western medicine offers. And they couldn't find anything wrong with him. And they were prepared to send him, they had got a bed in an inpatient psychiatric unit at the hospital, and they were prepared to transfer him there because they had ruled everything medically out.
You hear that same story over and over and over again, where they were going to keep your child, when in fact the medical part wasn't, the big. I don't want to get into medical versus whatever, because I'm not trained in that, but I'm sure that you went through a bad time.
Yeah, they just, it was the worst ever. He was so sick. He actually got worse in the hospital, which is not unusual for our kids. And it was just crazy. You had no idea what was going on. And just the day that they were ready to discharge him, his symptoms remitted almost completely, which was his pattern for about 2 years. Every 4 to 6 weeks, he'd have these severe flares where he was not able to function in any way. And he was out of school and we were home. And then he would just come back. And we ended up working with folks in doing kind of less conventional medicine. And we discovered he had Lyme and mycoplasma and strep and all kinds of things. And he was diagnosed with PANS. He was diagnosed actually relatively quickly, which I know is not everybody's story.
Right.
I talked to folks who spend years hunting for the diagnosis. We were really blessed. It was only a few months.
The reason we ask you these questions is we want to make sure you're a veteran of this. Because
yeah, it was 2 years of hell.
It is. And, but now you said you had your son back, right?
Yeah, he's probably about 90% there. So we treated both with kind of conventional and lots of alternative treatments. And for us, I felt like that was really important. There is, what I discovered initially with the diagnosis, I thought, okay, this is going to be over now, right? And it was really 2 years before he was back. Yeah. So that kind of disillusion, when we find out what it is, we think that then there's going to be this cure. That was before I really knew all that I know now. And that's typically not the story. For some, it is, round of antibiotics and everything's okay. But for many, it's just this long, convoluted battle. So for the energy work that I do, there were many moments where I actually couldn't work with him because he was too confused and
it's also your son
and worried. Yeah. So I was doing a lot behind the scenes and I was doing a lot for myself. And that's really kind of what I wanted to talk about. The parents and grandparents and caregivers of these kids are the warriors, right, on the battlefield. We're advocates and superhuman. We're researchers. We do all of these things to try and figure out what's wrong and to help them and to support them. And often our own well-being, physical, emotional, spiritual, just tanks because we're giving everything. These tools that I've used for a long time, I kind of forgot initially to use them for myself. And then finally, I was sort of collapsing under the weight of it. And someone said, you know, have you been doing this? And it's like, no, I totally forgot that I can do this for myself, and started. And it was truly saving because the work, without getting too deep into sort of the science behind it, helps the stress response that's happening in our body. And anybody who lives with a child who has PANS or PANDAS, they are in the highest level stress, and we are right there with them, watching our children suffer. And so trying to reduce that within myself, you know, I was able to show up differently for him, and I was able to cope in a different way, and then subsequently really heal in the aftermath.
So Suzanne, how can people reach you if they want to talk to you more about what you're...
If they are local in kind of the central Mass, Worcester area, and want to come into the office, I'm at Truth, and that's www.truthorganicspaandwellnesscenter.com.
How about a phone number, which is easier? Might be easier.
I'm going to give my email address. That's actually easier.
Okay.
And that's hello@doironhealing.com.
And spell Doiron.
DOIRON. So hello@doironhealing.com.
And Kimberly, how about your contact info?
So I think kimhypnotist@gmail.com is the easiest way to reach me. And I typically work with children. I think the youngest child I've worked with is 7 and up till about 21, 22. And I think like the key point of both of the pieces that we're sharing is that we know with PANDAS, it's not always one antibiotic that works. There are many children that are on a multitude of different antibiotics. And this is just one more piece that may offer families some support. You know, we always are constantly pulling. And I know for me, I will not work with a child unless they want to. Parents will sometimes seek me out, and I do an intake session with the child and really want them to be the one that wants this change and wants support. And the rapport that we build together is what drives their success.
Great. Perfect. That's success. Let's end on a high note, which is success, as opposed to any other words that could come up as we discuss this topic. So we want to thank you so much for taking time from your busy day to discuss this with us. And I'm sure that if people contact you and it's a fit, great. If it's not a fit, then I'm sure that you would be kind enough to send them on to somewhere else, because you know what? There's no one quick fix for this diagnosis and treatment and ultimately cure. So we want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, thank you. Having a community like this was the other lifesaver that I desperately needed. So thank you both for all you do.
Great. And Kim, do you want to talk about the monthly programs that may be happening again?
Yep. So the Central Mass Pandas Support Group, we typically meet the first Tuesday of every month at Not Your Average Joe's in Westboro. And we're hoping to start those up again once the restaurant is open. But you can look at Central Mass CMApandas.com and look for online support. We've done some online Zoom support sessions, but hope to again be in person soon.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, John.
Good. Great, ladies.
Oh, did she hang up?
She may have hit the button. But so do you ever get back to Assumption?
You know, I worked at Eisenberg Assisted Living, and
you went by it.
I went by it countless times, and I've only been on campus, I think, twice in the last 15 years. It's crazy. Yeah, it's changed so much.
Where are you from originally?
Walpole.
Oh, Walpole. Okay. You know, not Cedar Junction, but Walpole.
No, sir. That's only for the fellas.
Oh, the fella felons.
The felons. Yeah.
So,
I was a little nervous, I've been starting to do some videos to post. I always feel like, where do I look? Do I look at the blue dot? Do I look at the
you know what? I have a giant, look, here's what I had.